Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story in which some tourists rudely approached our OP, who was a local, about the route to one of the attractions, then giving him a quarter for his services. I don't think that our OP liked it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. You want directions to where? Okay. First off, before we start, this is in the UK. This happened in 2019 to me personally. I live in the UK in a tourist town/city, and as such, when we're in the city/town center, we often get tourists asking directions to this and that. No biggie most of the time. I just happily point in the direction, give as good of a description as I can, and I go off. This Saturday afternoon in midsummer, I'm with my family, and we're in town and looking for a place to eat when a tourist stops me and asks where he can find the Citadel. Now, let me make this clear. I'm in the north of England, and the only place that I know of that has a Citadel is in Carlisle, about 5 hours car or train journey away. So I politely say, sorry, I don't know what you mean. The tourist and his wife stop me in a thick American accent and say again that I want to go see your Citadel. Now, normally most US tourists are amazingly polite and nice, but this cantankerous B-turd was anything but. I repeated, I'm sorry, I've lived here all my life and the nearest Citadel is in Carlisle that I know of, but that's... Turned red and shouting at my, I don't care what you think, hillbilly. Now tell me how to get there. This is yelled at the top of his lungs, 6 inches away. So I calmly say, okay, no problem, and proceed to give him directions that will eventually lead him to a station nearby, not in the town/city, but a village outside. It'll take him around 2 hours to walk there. He notes them down, and I even point out landmarks that he'll see, real things, I mean. I say they'll need to board a local train to a sleepy little place, actually it's a larger city, then change his trains to X being a town with a station around 1 to 2 hours south of Carlisle. I tell him he can get a connecting train from there. The smirks and says, here you hillbilly, that wasn't so bad to be nice now was it? And gives me a quarter. No kidding, I have it. Cleaned off, of course, still in my jar in my office on a shelf full of other coins you can't spend in the UK. You'd be amazed how many dodgy coins you get from machines in the UK. I have no idea if the idiot followed my directions or not, or if he realized I gave him the most convoluted journey I could think of on the fly. Still makes me laugh to think of the idiot and his poor wife stuck on a train to Carlisle wondering where it all went wrong. Yes, I was a little crappy bit. If he'd listened, I would have asked if he meant a local castle, but like I said, I've lived here all my life, and it's never been referred to as a citadel. I told him how to get there in 5 minutes. Lesson of the story, don't be an a-hole. Quick edit. I mentioned this further up, but it's worth saying again, 99.99% of American tourists I meet or interact with are very polite and very friendly, which is lovely to see. This is the one exception I've come across. And our second story. Private tells the drill sergeant why he wants to be in the Navy, as do many others. Okay, so this happened in basic Navy training in 1956. Basically, when you get there, you have the drill sergeant that's pressuring you to make you as uncomfortable as possible. A day passes and Drill Sergeant Sirius would make people do sit-ups, push-ups, and other physical exercises. The one question that he would ask repeatedly is, why do you want to join this Navy? Some people said things about serving the country or bettering themselves, but then Private Honest gave his answer. Drill Sergeant Sirius said, Private Honest, why do you want to join this Navy? Because there were no jobs in my town, sir. I didn't want my daughter and wife to be hungry and homeless, sir. Drill Sergeant Sirius looks embarrassed and continues down the line. He goes to Private Honest, too. Why do you want to join this Navy? I was drafted, sir. I don't want to be in the Navy, sir. I'm here against my will. Drill Sergeant Sirius looks upset and continues down the line to Private Honest 3. Private Honest 3, why do you want to join this Navy? I don't want to, sir. I was drafted, sir. I had a good job and life at home, sir. I don't want to be here, sir. After this, the drill sergeant got frustrated and never asked the question for the rest of basic training, because I'm sure that he feared people telling him the reasons why they wanted to be there, or why people didn't want to be. First, let me say that the reason why I used Army terms and titles instead of Navy ones is that I thought that it'd be easier for people to relate to, as many are more familiar with the Army, and to be spared of Navy jokes, which I've heard many of. Also, years ago, we did say drill instructor, company instructor. The RDC term wasn't widely used when I was there, and started to be somewhat used by the time I left in the 60s. And our last story. Force me to move my business? Have fun getting home. Some years ago, I worked for a small local business run by a small local family from the not-so-small family home. The family home was a large 20-plus bedroom home that had been bought and run by the family as a hotel a few decades previously. At this time, however, it was a home for the parents, with part of the building converted to be office space for their business. The house sat on the banks of a river in a rural location and afforded me wonderful views of the countryside when I had the opportunity to look out of my office window. It was fairly idyllic. To access the property, there was a private road off the main road that accessed their drive and then passed through the family's property to their neighbor's property on the same riverbank further downstream. The neighbor had a legal right of access to the private road, as there were no other means of accessing his property. The business they ran started out as a man with a van operation that quickly grew to the point that they employed a dozen or so employees, including yours truly, and as a result, they started receiving more and more traffic to their home in the form of employees, clients, and deliveries. The problem. The neighbor got a little annoyed by the increase in traffic, including large delivery lorries. We were never entirely sure why he was annoyed, as his property was too far away to be bothered by the sound of the vehicles, and the lay of the land was such that he couldn't see them either. The employees arriving and leaving work meant a handful of cars arriving in the morning and leaving in the afternoon, and the deliveries would be 3 to 4 vans per day and a similar number of lorries per week. Hardly excessive, especially when you couldn't see or hear them. Nevertheless, annoyed he was and decided to take action. Remember when I said the house that had been bought as a hotel? Well, it seemed the family had never mentioned a change of use to the planning committee. Not so much of a big deal when you go from being a hotel to a home, but a pretty big deal when you go from being a home to operating a business. The annoyed neighbor noticed this discrepancy and immediately contacted the council's planning office, and they immediately contacted my employers. After much bureaucratic wrangling, they were offered a choice. Change the business back to a hotel or apply for a new planning permission to become a home. An application to change to use to cover the business they were currently running would be met with failure, as such a business already had a complaint against it from the neighbor. So the house went back to being a hotel. Actually, more like a massive Airbnb, but still within the planning permission. But even that didn't go smoothly. Changes in the law over the intervening years meant that the current access to the property didn't meet the regulation, and a new entrance needed to be built further up the main road to then join onto the private road a little closer to the house. This was done with no complaints by the family, because it meant that A, their dad got to play with a digger while constructing the new entrance, and B, the seeds of revenge had been planted. The revenge. As the neighbor also ran a business from his property that he did not have planning permission for, then the revenge would seem obvious to someone like me, who's not possessed by a vengeful demon of the pettiest kind. This kind of tit-for-tat was beneath my boss, however, and he began to formulate an act of even pettier vengeance, while still appearing to be firmly placed upon the highest of moral high grounds. He built the new entrance as required. He allowed neighbor access to his property as required, but as stipulated in the original right-of-way agreement, the neighbor must use the old entranceway, which had been left intact specifically for this purpose. However, as my boss did not want to cause any confusion to his new business guests, and because he'd granted a local farmer grazing rights for his sheep in the bit of land the old access road went through, He gated the old access road so nobody who wasn't supposed to use it could use it, and no sheep could make their way out onto the main road. In fact, he gated it twice. Then he locked both the gates and gave copies of the keys to the neighbor. The first gate was as close to the road as possible, just barely enough room to get a car off the main road, and then it opened inwards. Any vehicle entering through the gate had to pull up to the second gate in order to have the space to close Gate 1 behind them. Gate 2, however, opened outwards, so any vehicle needed to back up to a closed Gate 1 in order for Gate 2 to be open. The whole process of driving onto his property now meant the neighbor had to pull up to the Gate 1 as close as possible, get out of his car and unlock the padlock to the gate and drive through to Gate 2. Get back out of the car to close and lock Gate 1, then back the car up to Gate 1 and unlock and open Gate 2. Drive through Gate 2, get out of the car again to close and lock Gate 2, then continue on his way. Occasionally, the keys for these locks that were owned by the family would get lost and the locks would need to be replaced. The neighbor would always receive a new set posted through his letterbox, so he would always have the access he was legally entitled to. It's just that he always seemed to be out when the locks needed to be changed, and he'd have to walk down to his property to get the new keys, then walk back to get his car in. The new entrance had a sign attached to it and a camera pointed at it. The sign read that it was private land and that trespassers would be fined. The neighbor used it once, then received a photograph of his car trespassing on their property and a warning that further infractions would result in fines. He never tried to use that entrance again. As all of this meant that the business that I worked for now operated out of an industrial unit, and my view of the British countryside was replaced with a view of a factory wall, I felt very little sympathy for the odious little git that stuck his nose into other people's business. It's not that difficult to be a decent person. But once you decide to be a pain in the butt, you end up worse off. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.